Yeah, I think it builds up on, it reminds me of what was mentioned yesterday throughout understanding the purpose, pivoting along the way to ensure that you're actually able to identify solutions, but that really speak to the community and the people at hand who will be largely impacted. So again, a reminder for you to join and of course participate. Details are available on the website. And of course, hopefully wishing many of you all the best. We just might have the winner in the room here today, don't you think? Don't you think? Well, if you don't think you're a winner, then okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. That's what we're here for, right? To build up the encouragement and the enthusiasm that we all can make a difference and actually, through the acknowledgement of our efforts, continue to build up on that. And the reason why I mentioned the North Star that was highlighted yesterday, we also heard about Ubuntu being instilled and part of leadership that we need to execute. You also then reflect on how it is that we lead within the structure of the rules and regulations and the liberties that we also have been afforded in South Africa. Our next speaker is going to talk to us about, under the theme of reconnecting with our Constitution and realizing the South Africa that we struggled for. Please warmly welcome to the stage our next speaker and keynote speaker for this morning's session. As I call him up, I will read through his bio briefly. And again, this is a stage 3 introduction that we're looking for from Reverend Frank Shikane, who serves as one of the founding members of the Kagiso Trust and is currently chairperson of Kagiso Trust. He's the former commissioner of the first Independent Electoral Commission, which was responsible for the first democratic elections in 1994. A former Director General in the Office of the Deputy President, and later the Presidency and Secretary of Cabinet. He is the chairperson of the Kagiso Capital Board and Board of City Power Johannesburg. Ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome to the front of the stage our keynote speaker, whom you will be able to engage with in a brief Q&A session. So if you do have questions, jot them down, send them through the chat as well, and we will address them at the end of his speech and presentation. Reverend Frank Shikane. Thank you,
sir. Good morning. Yeah, I'm too disciplined, so I carry my mask to the stage. Can I just make sure that Google is up to date? I'm no more chair of Kagiso Trust. Mankoni is now chair of Kagiso Trust, and there's a chair for Kagiso Capital. I'm now chair for Kagiso Tiso Holding. So we changed positions in the last year or so, just to make sure that record is okay. I would like to firstly thank the organizers of this conference for inviting me to participate in it. And I must say that I've learned a lot. The invitation has introduced me to the Trialogue world, which was outside my world. So it's now within my world. And for the good work that you are doing in the interest of bettering the lives of the people of South Africa and the world. And in your own words, a more just, inclusive, and equitable society you are looking at. The theme I've been given, it's reconnecting with our Constitution, realizing the society that we struggled for. I struggled about how one would handle this theme. So I decided within this time I have been given to do the following. Reconnect us to this Constitution and then struggle with the issues of realization of society that we struggled for. At least I was part of those who struggled for. In terms of the Constitution, it's quite interesting that those who designed or produced this constitution, I was part of, were determined to make sure that no one's rights would ever be violated again. So we looked for the best formulations in the world. And the Constitution of Canada, I will come to that, and Sweden were helpful in this regard. We studied all the constitutions and we had good lawyers to make sure that not even the state nor the president can violate anybody's rights. And that was the determination. So if you look at our constitution, it is said to be the best, amongst the best constitutions in the world. It guarantees democratic value. It has democratic values built in it, social justice, and fundamental human rights. And it is also said to be the most progressive. So you might be one of the best, but it's the most progressive in terms of rights. Most constitutions in liberal environments guarantee individual rights. And this constitution goes further and does what many constitutions don't do. It's to guarantee economic rights. And that's what makes it extraordinary. And the battles in the Constitutional Court, which I'm not going to get into, are an indication of that battle. 3, that it is designed, and I would like to have the preamble of the Constitution, it's right on the screen there. It is designed to correct the injustices of the past and improve the quality of life of all citizens and underline all citizens. And so you know by now, having said just that we have not achieved what we struggled for. And it also says that you need to, it also, besides the all citizens, it also says there must be develop the potential of every citizen. That is free in terms of the preamble, free the potential of each person. Each person's potential must be freed in this new South Africa. If we have not done that before already, we have not achieved those objectives. And I thought I needed to read from the Civil Society Manifesto, which was adopted 2017. You can Google, it's in the system. The South African Council of Churches facilitated that process. And it says in this new South Africa, we want a just, equitable, reconciled, peaceful, and sustainable South Africa, free of racist, tribalist, xenophobic, and gender prejudices and violence, free of corruption and deprivation, where every child, and that's the operative sentence for me, where every child born is free to develop to its God-given potential. Now, because the SACC was involved, it puts God there. But actually, every child, and this is what we learned from the Fees Must Fall generation, one of whom was in my house. So I was one of those who had to panic, and my son is arrested. And he said to me, "Dad, you are able to pay for me at UCT." But there was a child at the stairs of UCT who arrived from Limpopo without proper documentation, nothing, but has got many distinctions. And he didn't even, just arrived, doesn't know what is happening here, doesn't have money. And he said to me, "Those are the people we are fighting for. It's not for me. I know you can pay for me." And I think that's what those who fought for this liberation, to have a society where every child has got full possibility of achieving their full potential. And I extracted one sentence from Section 9(1) of the Constitution: everyone is equal before the law. Now, this has been the ringing story since last year. There are people in this country committed grievous crimes, captured the state and entities of the state, but don't want to go to jail. They want to operate outside the law. When you capture the state and loot billions of rands, you are operating outside the law. They want to continue operating outside the law and not be charged. And we said everyone must be equal before the law. Not even the president can act outside the law. This constitutes the society we struggled for, and I thought I must just deal with that. A just, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and equitable society. The efforts, I want to say, we made efforts. There's no time. The amount of time I've been given can't help me to do that. We expected there would be a Marshall Plan after apartheid was gotten rid of, because it was declared a crime against humanity. We thought there would be a Marshall Plan like in Europe. That was not to be. We also thought that the donor community would come into our rescue, as they did during the apartheid struggle, or they declared us a middle-income country and therefore withdrew all the support we used to get. And the President Mbeki once did the numbers to say, to bring East Germany and West Germany together, how many billions Germany transferred from West Germany to East Germany. And the figure I got yesterday was $2 trillion from West to East to correct the injustices of the past. None of that happened in this country. We had a singular effort to cause the changes. I was part of that first generation. We worked so hard to reach 6% growth, which will get rid of, deal with our poverty. And we only reached 5.6. That was the last target. That means the point we reached of the GDP. Unfortunately, hell broke loose. The international financial world decided to misbehave, and the country got subjected to state capture, and the worst happened. All the numbers that we're facing, by the way, I don't like the idea of business saying when it's bad, it's facing south, and when it's good, it's facing north. And so I turn the globe. So the north is at the bottom, and the south in the north, and then use the expression. That makes more sense. But the numbers have turned. I used to say we were defeating poverty. Now it's defeating us. And so when you reach that stage, and this is the subject about this address, which unfortunately we don't have enough time, I must say that our democracy has been threatened, and it's at great risk. But it is solid because it's based on this constitution. And we're lucky that we have this constitution. They wanted to turn us into an Italian mafia. I don't like this expression because the Italians will hate me. But I mean, that's where it happened best. You capture the intelligence services, you capture the police, you take over the prosecution authority, then the ultimate is to get the judges under your control. And we went so close, and the judiciary saved us because they said no. We would have been like an Italian mafia where the criminals determine who becomes the judge, who gets charged, etc. We're clawing back now because I don't want to leave you with bad news. The State Capture Commission has given us the information. There's hard work to clean the South African Security Agency. It was totally corrupted and used for interests of human individuals, the police, prosecution authority, etc. They defend our democracy, who came up precisely because of that to defend this country. And I was the person, and I'm going to end up saying it again. When everything fails, when the parties fail, the ruling party fails, Parliament fails, they even try to capture Parliament. There's one moment when Parliament worked outside the Constitution. When everything fails, the people of South Africa becomes the last line of defense, which is yourselves. And we should never, never, never allow any politician to take us for a ride. What do we do with this situation? I would like to just start by saying, firstly, we are the last line of defense. And we must make sure no politician, no party, it doesn't matter who he is, does what they did to us, which I call treasonable. And when you read the commission report, you realize actually people committed treason from the top. And I'm hoping that the legal system will take care of that. Secondly, I would like to say the younger generation, not my generation, should actually be in the forefront of this struggle. Those who got our liberation, who struggled to put us where we are, were in the late teens and 20s. Very few in the 30s. People forget that Biko died when he was 31, when he was killed. Mapetla died when he was 27, I think. I went to detention when I was 27. And so it's that generation that's missing or in this sin. And three, that business need to do what business need to do. And that's what I would like to bring to this conference. You see, the real business is to create products and offer services that will make the lives of people better. It's not just profit, just for the sake of it. And I think once you go profit for the sake of it, then you produce poverty, and poverty destroys democracy. And my greatest fear today is that we have too many unemployed people. Somebody did an example of Free State, for instance. As a party, you just need 2 people, chair, secretary. The rest of the other 100 to qualify as a branch, you just buy poor people and pay them. And you get your votes. And those 2 people who go to the conference, all of them become 5,000 in that conference. They are there because they are paid to produce a particular outcome. If they win and they lose an election nationally, they will then interfere with the elections. And therefore, the Defend Our Democracy campaign is determined to make sure we set up professional unit that is going to defend our election results, so that no one corrupts the elections themselves. Lastly, I would like to say the crisis in the country, we've had lots of discussions with big business in this country, even last week, has made business to realize your future is at risk unless we deal with the issue of unemployment, poverty, and the huge gaps of inequality. I mean, this current debate about the CEO getting 300 million and can't give people 1,000. You know, for the ordinary people, for you as business, you might have a way of justifying it. But actually, for the ordinary people, it makes no sense. And the risk is that those people will revolt against us. And so I would like to say, because of that realization of business, this is the right moment. Conditions are ripe for what you call cross-sectional partnerships to realize a more inclusive and equitable society than ever before. And we're working now at how business get government listen to them, and how government should be able to work together in partnership with business, and how civil society should also participate in it. The next few months, we're going to have a conference on democratic renewal and change, the beginning of July. And it's going to bring business, civil society, labor, everybody in one room for 2 days, because we need to save this country. And I believe that we will together. There's a document going around. You can go defend our democracy. You can get it. It's going around to discuss, get everybody make an input. Business is supposed to have meetings, churches, religious communities, labor, everybody is supposed to have a conversation before the conference. We, as the people of South Africa, must come out with a people's manifesto that's going to tell the political leadership, it's either you do this or you ship out. I think the time has come for us to do that. And I believe this community that's meeting here would be one of the critical players. Thank you very much.
Dr. Chikane, thank you so much for reinvigorating the spirit of unpacking the Constitution for us. We would definitely like to engage you further in conversation, as we do have an opportunity for a brief Q&A with our audience members. So kindly join me on the other side over here, sir, for a brief conversation. And I think so refreshing that we hear that, of course, we're on the right track by being in the same room, engaging in conversations, but that we do need to be proactive in terms of the solutions that we are seeking. And you mentioned something so poignant that many are commenting on the platform, that we are the last line of defense. Yeah. And perhaps as I give the audience an opportunity just to consider their questions, raise your hands in the meantime, just to ensure that a roving mic can get its way to you. And of course, to those who are joining us on our virtual platform, please be sure to log on to the chat section of the platform, and that's where you can actually engage and share some of your questions. But I'd like us to commence with something quite critical that you mentioned, sir. Which is the fact that we are the last line of defense. And you highlighted the cross-sectional partnerships that we need to establish. Conversations, even refer to the challenges that we're witnessing in the mining sector at the moment regarding the strife of wage negotiations. And I guess what we're quite keen to unpack and hear from you is your perspective as to gathering in the same room is one area that I think we're quite good at as South Africans. However, being open-minded enough to fully comprehend the objectives, the perspective of the parties on the other side of the table is often where the deadlock happens. What are your thoughts and I guess considerations that as business, as NPOs, as members of civil society that we should be cognizant of in order to open up our minds, to be willing to consider the perspectives of the parties that we engage with?
You know, early in my life, we got somebody who came and ran a workshop on active listening.
Yes.
And I never forget it. It was ages ago. And it taught me that you need to put yourself in the shoes of the others for you to understand them. And ask questions, not to critique, but to understand better what they are saying, because we understand things differently. So if you put business in a room and you say engage each other with government, I've looked at the documents. You can see that they are not talking the same language. you need to be able, you can take labor and business, you can take civil society. Actual civil society, it's like the issue-based organizations, that they are so focused on the issue they are dealing with that they don't understand anything outside what they are dealing with. So everybody must worry about their issue, not the others. So the key thing is to listen to one another, understand each other, and be able to find solutions. Let me make an example just quickly. We had to deal with how do we allow Mr. de Klerk to have a racist referendum whilst we are here and we don't participate in it? How do we? And we debated it and we said, but naturally we should say, no, this thing mustn't happen. We must disrupt it because it's racist. But then we thought, oh, if he doesn't have his referendum, racist referendum, he won't get a mandate to negotiate. So we decided, let him have the racist referendum for the sake of the country. And it was difficult for us to justify it in the townships, to explain why we are letting it happen. So that's the point. At one point, we had to say, you need to empower de Klerk to bring along the whites. Because he won't achieve that objective. So you need to, I'm making an example that's quite dramatic, but you need to reach a stage where you must sacrifice some of the things that you want. The future, it's not where I stand or where I sit and where you sit. The solution, not the future, the solution, it's beyond all of us. So the two of us must move where we are and go to the third point. That's where the solution is.
Yeah. And that's an interesting way to put it, because it often seems as though it's a sacrifice that you're taking on your end, which I guess often contradicts how it is that we look to approach conversations, negotiations. You always want to do things in a manner that will work within your favor. And I think that provides us with great insight into the current challenges that we're facing now, as you've highlighted. If we take a look at the economic dynamics in South Africa, that we've got a different challenge on the table right now. And you mentioned intergenerational crosses. And perhaps there's some interesting conversations that you can share with us that happen at your family table that you can bring here. We've got a room of delegates and individuals of varying backgrounds, of varying age groups, and I'm keen for us to understand, how do we inculcate the culture of CSI, of shared value in a younger generation, and to prioritize that, especially given the current economic climate that we're in, where there's a high level of youth unemployment, even further level of disconnect and discourse, which then takes away that bigger vision and purpose, as you alluded to focus on the end goal and objective.
Well, let me just make an example. I've got 3 boys who are grown up now. They are gone. But whenever they meet in my house, I get scared. Because the one belongs to the youth league generation, the other one is in the middle, and the last, its fees must fall.
Sure.
Now, when a debate happens in that house, becomes really, and I try to be a peacemaker, they say, no, we don't need you. Leave us. And the older one would say, leave Rokotsof until he leaves UCT and go into industry. Because he used to say, no, I beat the white kids in the class. He was in a private school. He's at UCT. He doesn't need to be empowered. That's what he was saying. I don't need to be empowered. The firstborn says, you need to be empowered. And when they couldn't resolve it, he said, wait until he leaves UCT. When he goes into industry, he will know he has to be empowered. Because the white kids he beats in class will have an uncle with assets, resources, will, inheritance. He will have nothing. He will be starting from absolutely nothing. And his father was busy fighting apartheid instead of making money.
And that's interesting, because perspective matters.
So now he's out. He's now a lecturer at Wits. He's out. The reality stuck. And he's the one who has written a book that says, their parents dropped the baton, and that's why we are in the mess that we are.
Wow. That
Now,
must be
now,
interesting criticism for yourself, even to
yeah, it
receive.
means I'm now becoming a target, you know. Yeah, but that's what we need to do as South Africans. And he taught me, this young man, about thinking differently about university. I mean, I belong to a generation that said you can't have free university education. Can do it secondary, but not university. Then he confronted me with that child who gets distinctions but can't gain access to the system. And that, for me, is South Africa must leave the high places, come down here and say, apartheid created by definition poverty. Now, we don't have time to talk about it here. But I had the highest symbol of mathematics in Soweto when I passed matric. But I couldn't enter University of the Witwatersrand because I needed a permission from the minister. And when you apply, they say there's maths at Limpopo, there's physics there and chemistry, so go to Limpopo. And no, there was no physicist who was ever produced in Limpopo. And I had to go there. And then, of course, they flushed me out because we are resisting apartheid. Then I come and work in the Nuclear Physics Research Unit at Wits as a technician. They couldn't take me as a student, but I can be there as a worker.
Sure.
Now, if you come from that experience and you become free today and they say, well, you must fend for yourself, it can work. That's why Europe had a martial law. That's why Germany had this transfer of resources. You can't have those who benefited out of apartheid fold their arms and say, well, let this black lot solve the problem. It can't work like that.
Hence the ongoing engagement and conversation and bringing everybody along to the journey. And as you say, active listening.
Yeah.
In order to understand the various perspectives. We do have a few questions, and I believe Grant Kelly has asked a question related to us perhaps seeking solutions to actually change the legacy of the economic system that we inherited from colonialism and apartheid, and I do believe that you've addressed that briefly. I also want to check if there's another question in the room. Your hand has been noted.
What is that question? Summarize it.
The question from Grant Kelly, they wanted to know if you feel that South Africa has done enough to reflect and change where necessary the legacy economic system we inherited from colonialism or apartheid. Okay. That's one question, and would like to take one more as well from the floor. Not too sure if we can squeeze in another question due to time pressures, but if you keep your hand up and the mic can get to you. Any other question? There's a hand at the back. We'll come to you too as well. Perfect. So the first question, I guess, on what we've done in order to reflect or change where necessary the legacy economic system we inherited from apartheid.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to debate economic
Sure.
systems, because it requires another day. The generation that took over government in 94, I joined them 95. We decided to move away from an ideological approach. Because if you said, I want to be socialist like Mozambique, they clobber you. You pay a big price. Mm-hmm. They even organize resistance movement, Renamo, to make sure that that's why Mozambique paid the price. So we decided we're not going to do that. We're just going to say pragmatically what would work. And that's how we sat with Jay Naidu as minister in the office of the president, did these numbers, brought experts who said to us, to deal with the legacy of apartheid, you need to grow at 6%. So we reduced the ideological debate to how do you get the 6%? And we engage business, 2 years of business, 95 to 96, business had folded their arms, were watching what's happening.
Got you.
We brought them back, we got the parastatals, would sit with Transnet and say, we're going to grow at 6%, what is going to be your contribution in that growth? As private sector, what are you going to do to make sure? And we worked on it in 2008. Go and read the story there. We reached that. And the numbers were going positive, not north, but positive all over. The issue is when you make it ideological, you invite the superpowers. And I'm dealing with Ukraine now as moderator of the Churches Commission. It's frightening. So we don't want superpowers there. We don't want anybody. We want to solve our problems.
Got you.
And just to make one example, and I'll leave it there. My younger brother is, artificial intelligence person. He's going into that world, needs an investment, and the investor says, "Let me look at the project." Looks at it. It's going to pay you back in 19 months. And the investor comes back 2 months later and says, "No, I can make that money in 6 months. So I can't invest there. I'm going to put it where I'll make money quicker." But where he puts it doesn't create jobs, doesn't grow the economy.
Got you.
And the project my brother was working on would create jobs and change the economy. And so you need a change which says to business, I'll invest in the 19 months one rather than the 6 months one, for the sake of changing the conditions of people in the country.
Got you.
So there's going to be sacrifices. It can't be that the others must always sacrifice and you make money.
Exactly. Striking that balance between, I guess, an example, net zero targets versus net profit. And as you say, a sacrifice at the end of the day, but understanding the bigger goals and benefits. We are limited for time, so we will take these last two questions. Your hand was up, so if the mic can get to you, and the hand that was at the back, if the microphone could also get to you, we'll take them back to back just to ensure that we can get a succinct response as quickly as possible. You can go ahead, sir.
Thanks very much. My name is Mark Gerard. Reverend Chikani, just really appreciate those insights. And yesterday, and part of this conference, the last discussions we've had is really around a common vision and making sure that investment into our country, into our communities is guided by a common vision. And how international aid can be damaging, CSI with its own agenda or a different agenda can be damaging, and you spoke about sort of superpowers involvement can be difficult to work with as well. We have a vision, we have a constitution. How do we re-establish that vision or bring it back to the surface in a country that's had so many sort of challenges over the last several years? How do we sort of bring civil society together, corporate back together, whether it's international aid and government together to reignite and say, okay, guys, we have a vision. We're not pivoting away from this, but we need to sort of reignite so that we can achieve this together as a collective.
Yeah, very valid question there, Mark. In order to save time, if we could take the last question at the back as well, sir.
Hi, good morning. My name is Rest Kanju. I'm with Indalo Inclusive. Perhaps mine is not so much of a question, but maybe a comment. With the fear of disclosing my age, I'm a bit frustrated with the discussions that we had yesterday and today because they feel so old. We've been at it for quite a long time. And I just wonder if business and society, and maybe let me just say business, if we are serious enough about change, perhaps, Rev Chikani, the idea of state capture is not so bad if we're to use state capture positively. GIZ has captured the state. They work with government departments, they provide money, and they influence policy. And they influence, even policy direction, they influence programs, and they're not the only ones. I'm just wondering if business could possibly take that posture and that direction, start influencing government into the direction that we want. And they say money talks, and I do think that we should start putting money into government. Just
if
like
I may ask, sir, just to ensure that we are not endorsing any form of corruption.
No.
When you say money in terms of investment and capital allocation, is that what you're referring to?
If you look at the GIZ model or any other European funder, then it's not corruption. They're putting money into government and they're influencing implementation of programs on the ground. And in that way, they're able to achieve quite a few things. I mean, yesterday we saw EU giving Lesotho about $1.2 billion in terms of water and sanitation issues.
Got you.
There's a lot of influence within that space because they're providing money and resources and it's sometimes, or to a great extent, technical expertise. In South
Perfect.
Africa,
I
there
have
is-
to pause you there,
Thank
just in
you.
terms of the interest. But as you mentioned, your point has been emphasized in terms of allocating capital and allocating money essentially to influence policy. And perhaps we can link that to the theme of, again, fixing our vision, realigning it to make sure that we reinvigorate the excitement as asked from Mark. And if what the recommendations that we're hearing as well from Russ might have to be considered.
We have embodied the vision into the Constitution. Actually, it was quite, people forget that we had a transitional constitution just to have an election in 1994 to give us a space to talk amongst ourselves to produce the final constitution. And it took us 2 years to do that. And we got everybody, white, black, business, religious people, everybody to participate in this. I mean, I even had to help get an interfaith group to construct the paragraphs on religious freedom. Everybody had a bit to do. So it's in that constitution, the vision. And we were working on that from 96 to 2008. And we came close to making the difference in the country. Obviously, there are clever people who know how to exploit a system, even if it's good, to make money at the expense of others.
Gotcha.
But in the overall, the vision is there. And so just to say, I don't want to be marketing too much of the conference in July. I think it's the 1st and 2nd July.
And for those who can't attend, how do we within our spaces
No,
also
we're going
encourage
to
that
create
vision?
a situation where there are representatives from all the sectors in society and communities, and we're going to put it online. It's not going to be closed. So that we even debated that 2 weeks ago to say, how do you get people in Soweto to participate in this? Go and set up, get to a church, set up the system, and make sure that they can meet there and participate.
Got you.
So that we have everybody. Fortunately, the pandemic first forced us to be intelligent enough to use technology. We can get everybody watching, participating, raising questions. And so that conference will achieve what we are hoping it will achieve, what you are talking about. It brings every sector, except the politicians themselves. We decided that bringing political parties there won't help. We must make the determination and then engage them. Parliament, parties, but it will be the people who are speaking rather than political parties. It's a subject on its own, so it
Got
will
you.
take your time. But for my brother, who I can't see you because I don't know where you were talking from, and and at times seeing you helps. But let me just deal with that better. I may not have understood you well. In my active listening, I would want to ask more questions,
Gotcha.
but I can't do that now. I would like to say that that's why I have said the younger generation must come to the party. Because when I speak, they say, no, you talk old stuff, I want the new stuff that will tell me how we stop these criminals from taking over the country and governing us. And when you look at eThekwini, you must go and do a little bit of research there, where they kill you for standing for a councillor position. And I realize it's not the salary they are fighting about. It's that once you are a councillor, the criminals will make money. They want the person they want there to make the money. And so, 2016, more than, it was about 20 plus candidates who died during that election. And not even the Electoral Commission acknowledged that we lost 20 people. Not even the president. I listened to both of them. They said nothing. Now, there are many people who died who are candidates. Nobody makes noise about it. So the criminals are now in charge. And they're going to govern us. They will determine who becomes the president. And that's why I would like the younger generation to tell us, how are we going to stop these criminals? But to come to your subject, my worry about the logic, and I may not be understanding you, is that it assumes business is clean. And that if I have money, I can influence things in the right direction. But actually, people use the money to influence you in the wrong direction. So we need to also watch business, what they do with the money. So anybody who has money should not influence my thinking in terms of what I want, in terms of justice.
The intention and the purpose and the objective is what we should be evaluating.
Yeah, so business can use that. I know at present they've got a plan in front of the president. They presented that, and they tell us, this is the plan. But government is not biting. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Then I say, no, let's look at the plan, because are there no interest in the plan that are in the interest of business against others? And then it brings me to my public administration course. You know, the lecturer who came in class and said, the definition of government is an entity that mediates conflicting interests of society.
Sure.
So when a person presents a plan to me, I say, how is it going to affect others?
Got you.
Before I take it as policy. And policy must be a mediation of all these ideas to produce a better outcome for everybody. And that's more difficult to do as government, because I was there. But during my days, we're not pursuing our personal interest. We're saying, what is best for the country? You know, you could fight. I don't want to go into the fight of Cell-C. You remember when Cell-C came, there were bidders there, and they took each other to court for 3 years or so before it happened.
Got you.
And I thought, let's calculate how much money we have lost whilst these individuals are fighting. You see, there's a cost for everything. So me and you might be fighting about something, but we might be delaying the nation in terms of growth.
Got you. And I think you've underscored a very important element in a question that was asked earlier on our online platform by Louise as to how it is that we can shift and have businesses proactively also assist us in reaching our goals and objectives regarding the Constitution. You've also challenged and reminded us of the role that government should be serving, that it's not one leading the other, perhaps, but rather a collaborative effort and making sure that there's a perspective and purpose that actually serves all counterparts and parties at the table. Dr. Chikane, we'll have to leave it there for today, but we're really appreciative of the thoughts that you've shared with us. A lot of positive feedback that is coming through on the platform, and of course, Fiona Zerbst even saying Reverend Chikane is a national treasure. So if that's something that we leave you with today, I trust that you'll at least appreciate the feedback and outcomes. Thank you so much for your time today.